Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Erin Kavanagh. I am the local short-term rental expert for Grid, and I'm building a little brand called Stream. Stream is a short-term rental education, acquisition, and management group of people that are solely focused on the short-term rental investment. And if you are interested in something like that, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. I've got my co-host extraordinaire, Corey D'Agostino, who is a master at this game as well. So we're going to here to share some information with you about how to find the right one, and things like that. So I've been in real estate for 23 years, solely focused on Airbnb or short-term rentals since 2020 when COVID came around and everybody decided that they wanted to get away from the cities and things like that. So I've now circled in on this business, and that's all that I do. So I work out of the Shenandoah Valley. So I'm from Winchester, Virginia, south to Massanutten and almost over to um, Wintergreen, which is more central Virginia. I have teammates that are covering lots of different territories within West Virginia, the Northern Neck. We have like Alexandria, Virginia as well. So there's lots of areas within Virginia that we are covering. And we also have relationships with people in St. Petersburg, Florida, as well as Knoxville and the Smoky Mountains. So any of those markets you have a direct need, we can certainly help you with that. And if you don't, if you have someplace else that you want to look, I'm build a nice referral base of people, and we can connect you with the right souls. With me today, like I mentioned, is Corey D'Agostino. Corey, want to just give a quick intro of who you are and what your job is?
Sure. Still trying to figure out my job. I wear a lot of different hats. I've been doing, I've been doing real estate investing for 18 years, right? I've got single families, I've got a multifamily portfolio, and I've got short-term rentals in my portfolio as well. Um, the short-term rental world has kind of really opened me up to a variety of different avenues to go down. Some of which are co-hosting, right? So if you have a short-term rental and you don't want to manage it, I manage it for you. I also manage my own. I also do consulting and coaching for people who are looking to just get into the short-term rental game and aren't sure where to start. I can walk you through start to finish. And then I also do revenue management. I do consulting on pricing. If you're not sure where your pricing is, if your pricing has not if you're not getting the bookings that you want, you're not staying as full, and you think you should be making more money, we've got that avenue to help you out as well. So a variety of different things. I really, really, really enjoy it. As anybody who has spoken to me knows, I'm also super easy and accessible. So if you ever need any help, you are free. If you're on this call, you are free to call me or text me anytime you need a hand.
Yeah, and we've put your contact information in the
Sure.
chat. So if you guys need anything, obviously my number and Corey's number are there. So today's topic, how to find the right, most profitable Airbnbs or short-term rentals. Corey, let's get into it, man. So you've got a system that you've coined the three Ps. Kind of help me understand what that is real quick, and then we'll dive into like locations and stuff like that.
Sure. So locations are important. I think if you are, well, let's rephrase that. I think any location can be good if you set your expectations properly and you know what the property should do from a gross income standpoint going into the market, right? So everybody's got different goals. You could talk to five different investors. They're all going to have different goals and what their short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals are from investing.
Right.
So my goals might be different than Aaron's. My goals, I know, are different than Matt's because Matt and I have had a lot of conversations, right? And so what Matt's trying to achieve and what I'm trying to achieve are two different things. So as long as you know the market that you're getting into and you analyze the property and you know what to expect from a gross revenue standpoint, uh, you're on your way. Any market that you get into, though, and I'll hone it in, right? I think it's more of a vacation market if you get into it, or something outside of an urban, even suburban area. I think the property that you pick the property you pick is super important. I think it has to have an aesthetic look to it. Your only way of selling these properties is through the platforms, right? Through the short-term rental platforms. Those are your Airbnb, your VRBO, your Booking. And you've got one shot, like Eminem says, right? To stand out, right? You have got to get those pictures to look the right way. So the first P that I always look for is the property. What makes the property unique? Does it have a unique architecture to it? Does it have a unique setup? Uh, do you think that when those lights are on the inside and the sun is going down, will that property photograph the right way, right? Which brings me to the second P, which is photography. I think it's super, super important to have professional photography on all of your properties. So if you have the right aesthetic look, the architecture is nice, you have the right amenities in the property. That's like a game room, a hot tub. You got your swing chairs from the porch, and then you've got the professional photography, super important. And if you have the right pricing structure set up, that's the third P is the pricing. If the right pricing structure is set up, you're on your way to a successful short-term rental.
100%.
You can't squeeze water out of a stone, right? So I have people who have come to me and said, "Hey, my property's not doing as well as I want it to." And I say, "Okay, well, how do you want your property to perform? What's the gross revenue you're expecting on this property?" And the numbers they give me are like completely off the charts. And I said, "Where did you come up with that number?" And I've had people turn around and say, "Well, I knew what the mortgage was going to be, and so I just wanted to buy something that I thought would cover the mortgage." And I go back to the question, "Well, how did you determine how much money that property should bring in?" And there's no clear answer, right? So you got to run your numbers before buying the property, and make sure that the numbers that you're seeing, you've got all your expenses accounted for. I spoke to somebody the other day who was in a tough spot because the property was not performing the way that they wanted to. We went over and we did an entire pricing structure for them. They are now getting bookings, but it's still not bringing in enough money to cover their expenses. And I said, just out of curiosity, right? Like, where did you go? Where did we go sideways here, right? Like, and this wasn't somebody I helped. This is somebody that came to me after they had already purchased their property. I said, why are your numbers so far off between where you are now and what you were expecting to come in? And they turned around and said to me, "I never accounted for cleaning fees." Well, cleaning fees are a big expense. Behind your debt service on your property, which is your mortgage, your cleaning fees are going to be next to your debt service. If you have 10 turns a month and each clean is $150, well, that's $1,500 a month that you need to account for on your expense report. And so if you miss that on the front end and you miss all these other expenses on the front end, you're not going to make enough money on your short-term rental to be able to pay all of the expenses that come with running a short-term rental. So super important
100%.
to get the right property, get the right photography, get the right pricing structure, but make sure on the front end, right? And this is what I help people with. We analyze the property the right way. We know what the property is going to bring in a ballpark. It's not a perfect science because the market is ever changing. There's a lot of factors outside of our control that affect the short-term rental market, right? This is leisure and hospitality. This is not long-term living, right? That somebody has to have. This is expendable income that people have.
Absolutely. And just to piggyback on that, so the three P's are the most important thing when you're talking about a specific property. I'm gonna go a step behind that or originally. So when you're the first thing, hey, you know what? I want to invest into a short-term rental. There are three types of markets that I would think about before you do that. And each one is going to be something of different research that you're going to have to do. So I'm going to talk about a regional market. The regional market that I work in is the Shenandoah Valley. Why is it considered a regional market? It's because people can drive there within 7, 8 hours, whatever, spend the weekend, spend a week there, and have enough to do. So this is why the Smoky Mountains, the Shenandoah Valley, you know, Lake Pocono, those areas are all doing what these Finger Lakes in New York. There's enough there where people can drive an hour or 8 hours and still have a place to go and visit. The next would be a destination, your Outer Banks, your Kissimmee, Florida. You've got people that are going there for a specific reason. We're going to go to Disney, and I'm going to, buy an Airbnb or a short-term rental in that market so that I can host families on an annual basis. The third would be a metropolitan area, right? So we see a lot of people do stuff in Nashville, Tennessee. It's a hot market, right? But with that comes some opportunities and some restrictions, right? So in any of these locations that you're looking, you want to say to yourself, "Hey, is this a place that I want to go and visit, or is this a place that I could use as my own personal vacation rental?" Right? And the reason I first got into this business is to have a pure investment, yes, but also have, because I don't go on vacation all that often, but I do love the places that I work. And so it's kind of a weird thing for me, but I love going to Front Royal, Virginia, because there's the river, Shenandoah River is there. There's Skyline Drive. I can go hiking. I can just step out of my world for a half a day and visit this property, sit in the hot tub for a minute, and then go hike on the trail and be out of my mind as far as even though I'm only 20 minutes from that particular where I live. So, what I'm saying to you is really think about first, is this a place that I can go and visit? Second, is this a place that I love? Right. And then is what type of investment, like Corey said, is this a full-time investment? Is this a second home and then an investment? Or is it just something that I can share with my friends and have? So we have that conversation all the time. So restrictions. The next phase of this conversation is about rules and regulations. What rules and regulations dictate how much you can make, and what you can do with that particular property. So, Corey, give me a little insight as to what you feel, or your rules and regulations. What are the things that you look for?
Um, just how strict or not strict there's you got to look at a couple things, right? You got to start. I don't know if you want to start big or small. You can start either way. I think starting small is probably the best because well, again, I think it depends on where you are. I can make an argument for starting either way, but uh, you got to look at the county regulations, right? So I don't, not to my knowledge, I don't think you have to worry about state regulations too much for short-term rentals, right? But you do
No,
need to
it's
watch,
county based.
you got to watch county regulations, right? So you got to take a look at what the county regulations are. They're easy enough to find if you go into the county websites, right? And pull up short-term rentals. You could actually even call the counties. Some of these counties, you could just go ahead and get on the horn with them and ask them, and they will tell you where you can and cannot do short-term rentals and what zoning you need to be in or not be in, and what the permit process is or the process to get the business licenses are. After you get down smaller than the county, you go to the town, right? So Page County, very loose in their restrictions. However, when you boil it down to like Luray gets a little more strict when you go outside of the town limits, right? So if you go outside the city proper of Luray, and you start to look at the restrictions, they like R1, which is residential one zoning. It's much harder to get a business license for a short-term rental in an R1 zone property in Luray. However, if you're downtown Luray in the business district, they have no problem with it. So you got to go from the county to the town, and then I'm sure we've all heard the stories, right? Then you got to look at the HOA, and this is the one that gets a lot of people. You got to take a look at the HOA. You have to look at the bylaws. You have to look at the covenants and make sure that most of them have a section in their covenants or bylaws somewhere that talks about short-term rental restrictions, or rental restrictions as a whole. Some of them say nothing less than 90 days. Some of them don't say anything, and those are the ones that are good. Um, but those are the three kind of tiers: the county, the town, and then the HOA is what you want to look at. And
Yeah,
HOA rules can change. So that's the other thing to be careful of, right? Um, Now getting the covenants changed in a particular market is difficult from an HOA perspective. There are thresholds that need to be met according to state law with HOA covenants. And the HOA covenants typically can't be changed unless there is, and I think it's a little bit different, but I just want you to understand the thresholds here. 85% or it's either 80 or 85% of all the households in that HOA are attending the meeting or they're there by proxy. And that's a huge number, right? Trying to get 85% of the households to a meeting or get them there by proxy uh, is difficult. And then there needs to be a 2/3 majority vote from those 85 people that attended that meeting in order to pass something to change the covenants. Now, I think that varies a little bit, but I know the thresholds, the general thought on this is the thresholds to change the covenants are very, very high. Okay. Um, not every HOA has 400 households in it, right? So 400 household HOA, it would be difficult to change those covenants because good luck getting 85% of those members to attend the meeting or get there by proxy. Typically, it doesn't happen.
Sure.
However, an HOA that only has 8 houses in it, okay, and somebody buys a property in that area and they know before the sale happens that they don't want HOAs there. And so the 7 people who are there in that HOA get together and say, hey, let's have a vote on this, right? All of a sudden that changes the game. So I saw this happen to somebody down here at one of the lakes down here in North Carolina, right? They went under contract to buy a property. The HOA was only made up of 9 houses. They got wind that this guy was doing this, and they went ahead and they had a vote, and they decided to change the HOA rule. So make sure that you know the size of the HOA, make sure that you know the covenants and the bylaws that are in the HOA, and you can start to get a feel. You're going to start to get a feel when you call for the HOA bylaws or covenants and you let them know why you want them. You'll start to get a feel for whether or not they're welcoming to short-term rentals or they're going to try and shut it down.
Yeah, for sure. And just take a step further, like if you're thinking about a short-term rental in a city, right? For like downtown DC, the rules there are very strict. The rule for DC is you have to actually live in the house, but then you can rent out your basement or something like that. That you have to be the primary owner of the property, then you can rent it out. New York City doesn't allow them at all. And the bigger the location, the more hotels that are in the area, the more restrictions you're going to find in those particular areas, right? So if you're considering something like, hey, I love going to New York City, I want to buy an Airbnb so I can go and visit it at least once a quarter and then rent it out the rest of the time. Well, yeah, it's probably something that you really have to investigate or not invest in, right? Because the cost is too much if you lose that opportunity. Um,
The other
and
thing is don't look around and say, like I've heard a lot of people who look at a particular area and they go, oh, I'd like to get a short-term rental there. And
yeah,
then I've turned around to them and be like, listen, the restrictions there are really hard or they do not allow short-term rentals. And they say, oh, well, I see all these short-term rentals in the market. Well, the fact of the matter is some of those people shouldn't be doing it. Some of those people are grandfathered in. Some of those people have already gotten their names drawn in the lottery system, and there's no more short-term rentals allowed until somebody leaves, right? So
sure.
don't just look at the fact that there's short-term rentals in a particular area and make the assumption that it's okay to run a short-term rental there.
Yeah, very much so. All right, so we just went through a lot. Does anybody have any questions about location wise, regional, destination, city, metropolitan, or restrictions, anything like that?
I have a question. So I know you named a few locations, but what are some locations that you can point out to us that are maybe a little bit up and coming, not like super hot, where there's a lot of competition going on? So what is your opinion on that? Like some locations on East Coast,
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So Olga, where do you live currently?
Reston, Virginia.
Reston. Okay, so Shenandoah Valley is a great location. It's not too far away from your current place, and it's far enough away. So, for example, if you were to invest in a second home loan, which is 10% down payment, you could then match the rules, right? The rules on a second home loan would be, and Cherie, you're on the call. Check me if I'm wrong,
I'm a
but it
mortgage loan officer.
Oh,
Yeah,
you
I
know the
know
rules. So
Olga.
yeah,
She
so
works
you
for
have to be a certain
Truist.
amount of miles away. You have to live in the house, a certain amount of time, those things. So very good. So for example, there are different markets in the Shenandoah Valley. So for example, Boise. where Bryce Mountain is. Boise is a up and coming market. There's a lot of new homes being built there in the $500,000 range, and there's a lot of older homes that are being renovated and still starting to perform. So in my mind, the price points to buy into that market can be as little as 300,000 and as much as 700,000. So depending on the property, the average right now I'm seeing in there, Corey, you've got a property there, so you're on you've got some rules on this one too. So in that particular market, it's better to have a 4 bed than a 3 bed, and so the price points of the 4 and plus beds are going to be a little bit higher. But so that's an up and coming market. Stanley, Virginia, all of a sudden Stanley is a up and coming market, even though it's close to Luray. It's a separate market altogether, even though it's only 15, 20 minutes away. Then you have a place like Massanutten. There's a lot of competition in those locations, but at the same time, I would say worry about yourself, right? What am I going to do with that particular house that's going to make it even better? Which kind of segues me into the next part of the conversation. But did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. And one other sub question. So in any of those markets, are you seeing multifamily available, like duplexes, fourplexes?
Unfortunately, I'm not seeing very many of those out there. The reason is most of them are within. So, for example, you might see a lot more of that in Front Royal in Warren County, but then they won't allow for short-term rentals. I mean, they allow for short-term rentals, but there's certain rules that apply that you have to be 100 feet from your next door neighbor to have a short-term rental. So there's also a 90-day permitting process and a $1,700 fee to get into the game. And that can only happen once the property is purchased. So, as far as location goes, I'm not seeing as many multifamily locations within the Shenandoah Valley, but that doesn't mean they don't exist. It's just harder to find those.
And Olga, are you asking more about the demand from an entry level price point, entry barrier to entry type of deal, or from a short term rental saturation point of view?
Well, I was asking because my thinking is if we have a multifamily, there's a potential for more cash flow. So,
Gotcha.
So in those markets, the again, they're all different markets, but in the markets like Shenandoah County, to an extent, Warren County, Amherst, Orange, Page County, I don't think people are going to those markets to look for a quad, right, and stay in one of the units there. I think the attraction to those areas is to be out, have your space, be in a cabin in the woods, uh, more of a rustic feel to it, as opposed to leaving what they went from to come back to something that they just came from, right?
Yeah,
So I don't know
wholeheartedly.
that a multifamily. I like the logic on it. I like the thinking, um, but I'm not sure that a multifamily 4 unit place in one of these rural areas is what is driving people to the area. They're coming there to get away, to be on vacation, to have their space. I'm big on outdoor spaces at my cabins, right? I think that that's a big thing to have, and I'm not sure you're going to get that with like a fourplex. However, depending on where your budget is and what you're looking for, I do think there's a market in Shenandoah County and Page County for boutique hotels, right? That's a little bit of a different animal. I think that if you can find a 10 or 12 unit boutique hotel and go in there, buy out the existing owners because they've all got somebody who's in there already, and revamp that thing with some really nice interiors and a nice common space outside, maybe some back door, some backyard area. And if it's got a view, it's a plus. But I think the boutique hotel space is if that's what you're going to look for, I think you should shift your focus from multifamily to boutique hotels. I think that's where the play is better, and you can definitely make money doing that.
Yeah, again, it's location specific. I was driving in Elkton the other day, and there's a property around along 340 there that it's been a hotel or motel, excuse me, for long, long time. right? And it looks a little bit run down, but there were still cars out front. So there might be a space for that. Again, the purchase price at the beginning might be a little bit higher to buy that business, but I can tell you, I toured a cabin yesterday that was 300,000, 299 to be exact. It's a two bed, one bath, 600 square feet, and it's a couple's paradise. So that young couples that want to just get out, like Corey said, just get out of the woods and go hike the trail, bring their dog, then rest and have a glass of wine in the hot tub. That's the market that we are in here specifically. Some people started asking questions about different types of locations like Playa del Carmen, like Mexico. Unfortunately, I don't know enough about that to speak specifically, but if you're going to say something like, I'm just going to reference Myrtle Beach, right? So Myrtle Beach has a lot of what they call condotels, right? So it looks like a hotel, and each of them are a condo unit, and there's one bed, two bed, three beds, depending on it is, and they're right on the beach. And then they've got the amenities of that building, meaning indoor and outdoor swimming pools. They might have a restaurant or a bar attached to them. Those are all fantastic because a lot of people want to stay right on the water and can't afford the multi-million dollar, six, eight, 10 people properties, that are there that are, thousands of dollars per night. So the problem with those units, while the cost is, $200,000, $300,000 to buy them, the cost that's really prohibitive is the condo fee, and then they also require you to pay a management fee. And the one that I stayed in last time was a one bed place. It was just my wife and I. It was fabulous. You could, go look out on the balcony, and there's the water. Yeah, they were charging $150 a night. Our weekend stay was little more than $400, with cleaning fees and everything associated to it. But they had a 40% management fee. And
Mm.
at the end of the day, something like that, I can't see that making money. Now, what's that play? That's more of an equity play or a place that you can go and visit with, a smaller scaled couple, you know what I'm saying? Maybe a small family or something like that. Um, the next question that we got here is, yeah, or that's right, Sharia tax play for sure. Um, Rick Ryan asked about STRs for musicians to practice for their band. I've not seen that personally, but that brings me into the next conversation, right? So when I'm looking at a property, I want to ask myself, it doesn't matter what price point, doesn't matter what area. I'm looking at who is the avatar that's going to rent this property, and how do I market to that person specifically? So, Corey, do you have any insights to offer with this particular, conversation?
Um, you and I separate a little bit here. I don't really think about an avatar going into it, right? I find the location, I look at how much it can do based upon the bedrooms, and that's what I go for, right? My three bedrooms that I have out in the Shenandoah Valley, I picked up everything from families to groups of people coming along. I've had couples come up there, girls trip, guys trip. It doesn't matter, right? Like I've got the whole gamut. So I don't really focus on one particular area of person or another. I just find something in an area that the gross numbers speak to it being able to do very well for the price point that I'm getting into the property. And then I just let it roll. I'm not going to
Got it.
get specific. I'm not going to cater to one group or another, but I'm not going to exclude any groups either.
Yeah, I don't want to exclude anybody in particularly, especially because of fair housing and things like that. But there are specific types of properties that are out there that cater to specific people. Um, and if you're, uh, for example, the property I own is a two bed, one bath A-frame. The couples that show up there are either small family or a couple, and that's it, because the size of the property is not going to match, right? And so the photography, the marketing, the Instagram posts, the other marketing that we do outside of the platforms really cater to those types of images and that bring in those types of clientele or avatars to our business. So, having something for a band practice, that's very specific. Are there enough bands out there? Sure. Is there enough, for them to rent it exclusively for the weekend to practice and build a tape? Sure. Um, is that a barn play? I don't know. It depends on the sound. Does it have a sound booth or something like that? That's an interesting question. So, but I do like looking at property specifically. Is this set up for families to come and visit, like the Outer Banks, for example, those big houses, right? You've got $20,000 for a week, and you've got 25 people that you can sleep there. Not many people can afford that individually, but if they bring multiple groups of people from their family, then there you go. I see
So that's
Shree.
interesting. I hadn't heard that before. So what marketing are you doing outside the platforms to target these specific groups?
Yeah, so I'm using Instagram a lot. So we're creating reels. We have photographs. So the younger crowd is out there using Instagram more frequently than Facebook and LinkedIn and other social platforms. So I'm seeing a lot of people advertise lifestyle, drinking wine, sitting by the fire, looking at the river, kayaking, those types of things that are advertisements for direct bookings, as well as, hey, check me in on this particular site. So, if you've got a property that is performing with your pricing strategy and you're at 100% booked, then maybe you don't need this, right? But what happens in the slow time? Or what happens if the avatar or the algorithms change and now we have to have something else? Or there are some properties out there that get kicked off a platform for some reasons, and now you still have this property and you need other sources of income other than a platform that's not going to allow you to be there. So I'm using Instagram, I'm using Facebook, I'm taking photos, I'm doing reels, I'm
Do you put
sending
just
out.
the Airbnb links on there, or or are you taking those bookings direct? And then how do you
Yeah,
track that?
yeah, so we have, and you use the same platform, so we have Hospitable, right? And
Right.
Hospitable has a forward-facing website for your properties that can be set up to take in direct bookings. And so then you don't have to pay the platform fees. So we would use that link to drag traffic from Instagram to our lifestyle, right? Wow, I follow this page, right? So there's one out there right now. If you go onto Instagram, it's called Creme de la Creme House, Haus. And this young lady, she's got it nailed to the T. She's got two properties. One, Corey, she's got it's over in Rileyville at along the river. It's got the game room, the White House. You know the one I'm talking about. She tried to
Yep.
sell it for $795. She markets that like crazy. And I'll share you the link, but amazing. It's couples sitting out by the fire. It's people playing the games while they're at the thing. Um, maybe it's actors doing that, but those are different lifestyle photo shoots that she's adding to these sites to generate general bookings or direct bookings. So anyway, Cherie,
Do
your
you know if it's
question.
working?
It does. It does. It helps. So it may not be what Airbnb brings in, but it certainly brings in 5 to 10%, maybe an additional booking or two per month. Cherie, I'm sorry. What's your question?
That's okay. Actually, it was in line with what Corey was asking. I have heard more of the people who say, "Oh, we have family reunion," or several couples are getting together and they are booking the larger properties. But I did want to ask you, like, are the two bedroom, 2-1, for example, are those being booked as well? And speaking of just like one bedroom, I'm sorry, one bathroom, is one bathroom wise, or, are there certain properties that people should maybe stay away from because they don't perform as well? So I want to ask you both of those questions.
So I try to stick with a rule of thumb is like 4 people per bathroom.
That's true.
I've seen successful 3 bedroom, 1 baths. Not necessarily my cup of tea, but I know that they work, right? I think the right property can make it work. It's a very interesting question that you just asked because I've actually been looking at this probably over the last 3 days. And I know, I want to say 4 months ago, I think AirDNA did a study. And I caution everybody on any of these guru people, on any of these big groups, on any of these studies that are done by some of these companies. Like I don't understand the logic on it. I didn't understand it then, but I was like, okay, we'll see. And now my will see is, okay, my logic seemed to outperform what they were thinking. So 4 months ago, AirDNA came out with a study that said the um, the larger bedroom counts are going to be better off, and they're going to pick up more traffic and be better occupied than the smaller bedroom counts. And this was 4 months ago going into 2025. And I sat there and scratched my head and I was just like, I don't understand how that's possible. Because with all the back to work that's going on, right back to the office, it takes a little bit more coordination to get these larger places booked with that many people. And the price points that people are getting, that people have bought these houses at over the last year and a half, right, are super high. So they need a lot of revenue to come in. So the price points to rent the places are now at a premium as well because they have to make up their debt service. And I manage properties down in Blue Ridge, Georgia. I manage properties out in North Carolina, and I manage properties up in Shenandoah. And I manage properties that are 2 bedrooms all the way up to 5 bedrooms. And I own some myself. I could tell you right now that across the portfolio that I manage, the 4 bedrooms and 5 bedrooms are struggling across the board. And these aren't just mine. These are friends of mine that I know as well that run short-term rentals. Some are in Massanutten, some are up in Shenandoah, some are in Front Royal. And I talk to these folks and I say, hey, what are you seeing going on? And these are people who know what they're doing, right? So they know what they're doing. The larger properties are struggling. My property in Boise, the bookings that I have right now are bookings that came in 2 and 3 months ago. But over the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks, for this month, I haven't gotten any additional bookings. Everything that I have on the books right now came in 2 and 3 months ago. My 2 bedrooms and my 3 bedrooms, my 3 bedroom is 94% full this month in April. My other 3 bedroom is 91% full, and my 2 bedroom is 90% full. And I'm getting bookings into May and June right now for those properties, but the larger properties are gasping for air. So I found it interesting. Like I said, you can't always listen to the noise that's out there because a lot of it is noise. I think you have to use your own common sense and logic to make some decisions that rub against the grain that you're hearing out there because a lot of it is just that, it's noise, and it can steer you in an awful direction if you just follow the masses and listen to what's being said.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and again, I'm a specialist in the Shenandoah Valley. I am not necessarily looking at other, like Broken Bow. I look at Broken Bow in Oklahoma and it's every house is gorgeous. I don't know that market very well yet, but I can tell you in our area, what I know is, hey, my wife and I want to get out of Dodge. We've got a couple $100. We're going to spend it on this, right? Now, there is a lot of economic uncertainty going on because of the current administration. I'm not saying anything good or bad. I'm just saying there's a lot of chaos going on right now. So people are afraid to do something. I am busier now than I ever have been as far as short-term rentals purchases are concerned. That's interesting to me. So they're seemingly flocking to real estate to buy an investment, right, as something. So the amount of cash to get in, 10%, 20% DSCR, 25, 30%, whatever the deals are, right? So there's that. But what I also know is vacations are never going to go away, right? People always want to go on vacation whether it's for a long weekend or a week or two or whatever the story is, right? The thing that I love the most about the smaller 3 bedrooms and below, I'm not saying one bed yet, right? But there are a few one beds out there that are really cool that are either really great views or right along the Shenandoah River or something like that. But like those 2 bed, one baths, while they're not bringing in the gross numbers, the percentages tend to be a lot better. Like the one I have, for example, Corey helped us with the pricing strategy. It's a 2 bed, one bath. It's an A-frame. It sleeps 6 people. Last year, we grossed 76 grand. This year, we're on track to gross about 80. So I think we've maxed out that particular investment, but that's still, we only invested 350K into that property. So, I think the percentages are the things that people should go towards and lean into, right? And I really do believe the avatar makes a difference. Like if you're telling me the 4 bed at Boise, your house is gorgeous. There's a lot of things to do there. if you're telling me that you're slowing down, I think that has a lot to do with price per night, maybe, and having, the economy stretch us a little bit. It's just a guess, but maybe that's the thing versus having a lower price point, $250, $300 a night versus 450, 500 a night. I don't know.
We brought it under 200 a night right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. There you go. That's a steal. You need to post that
Uh,
link to your property right now because that's a gorgeous property. Cherie, your question.
Well, just another comment because I was thinking also about the economy as well. And even, with my friends and family and personal life, like we're like, we think just we're going to take a couple of smaller vacations that we can hop in the car and go somewhere versus something bigger where we have to get on a plane and, all of that other stuff. So, I just wanted to
Yeah.
ask about that and also put that out there as well.
Yeah. So, any other questions at the current moment? Matt, you got something for me. I can see it. Steam is coming out of his ears. He's thinking.
You got to get him that property you showed me this morning.
Yeah. Yeah. Matt, I don't know if you saw as a new one showed up in Stanley, 315K.
I saw it. My buddy Jeremy wants it, so
Yeah.
he's on it.
All right, very good. Anyway, what are your thoughts? I mean, we're talking a lot here. You've been analyzing a lot of properties in Virginia. What are your thoughts?
Oh man, yeah, I like hearing that the smaller bedroom counts work with high occupancy. And I agree, like driving distance, making that like a little more recession proof makes sense to me. So that's what I'm focusing on as well. I'd love to find a 3 bedroom if I could, just to give it more upside. Um, so yeah, price point is important. I'm just finding it hard to find something that under 350 or around 350 is fine. But you've got to include setup costs, I think, adding a hot tub, adding all the things make that a lot more difficult to cash flow.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, again, I only, if you're working with me as a real estate agent, I'm only going to send you, I mean, out of all of the 230 or 40 in the Shenandoah Valley listings that are available, I might only find 10% that are in my wheelhouse as far as capable of being a short-term rental based on photographs, right? Then I drive to the property and take a look and see what's around it. Because I did one yesterday, absolutely gorgeous property, fully renovated, hot tub, fire pit, everything is there. And I look at the next door neighbor's house and it's disaster. Cars on blocks. It's, you know, dogs barking. It's everything you don't want when you're trying to go on a peaceful vacation. And so I told the listing agent that, and he's like, well, there's nothing I can do about that. I still have to do my job. I'm like, absolutely. Here's what I would change about it. I would add a fence so that it can't be seen. Maybe, build some other tree barriers or something like that. But yeah, that's going to be a tough sell. And it's a good house, 3 bed, 2 bath, for $419,000. So should produce at least 80,000 in gross revenue but I always think about other things too. So I went and looked at one the other day. It was on a dirt road. It took me now the dirt road was not just a dirt road, but it was not maintained by anybody. There were crevices on this thing that you could only drive up with a 4x4. And I talked to one of my contractors and he says, well, I could fix that, but that road in particularly where you're going is going to be over a mile and a half up the hill, and you're going to have probably $200,000 worth of road work that needs to be done. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense if you're only buying a 3 bed, 2 bath. Now you get to the house, everything's brand new, log cabin, 3 bed, 2 bath, absolutely gorgeous views. But getting there, there's a couple things you think about. It's the drive in, right? So if you don't have a 4x4 or all-wheel drive vehicle, you can't get there. Number two is how easy is it for your service people to kind of help you, right? Can you manage that property efficiently enough to do what you need to do without having any additional expenses? And then, for example, what happens in the snow? Is that road being taken care of by the town? Is it county? Who's going to go up that road if it's like this? Right. So, looking at location, looking at, accessibility, our team actually owns a property. It's got 32 acres. It looks out over the water. The property itself is absolutely gorgeous. But you literally have to drive through a cow field to get there. There are animals on the road. So I think it's cool. I think it's part of the aesthetics of the property. You get there. But in that particular property, there's always trees down. And so having to have a budget that's going to take care of road work, take care of other things like when trees fall into your road, what are you going to do so you can access the property or get out? So stuff like that. Um, anyway, other questions? We've got about 5-10 minutes left to go here. Corey's got to jump himself. Olga, you got anything for me?
No, I appreciate the shares. Really liked how you kind of gave us an idea what the growth could be on, let's say, 350, 400.
You definitely have to have the right pricing strategy. And I know Corey very, very well. He's helped us get to where we are, right? So his strategy definitely works. I'm adding to that just in case, because I don't want to fail. I can't have a failure. What happens if we don't get booked? Then we're into, capital expenditures that we don't necessarily have. So I have to rent this property to a point where it's making money. Now, and I'm also not taking any profits from that property until I have 6 months at least of, monthly expenses saved up just in case the HOA or the HVAC goes out or something like that. So, looking at, is the property in good condition? If it's not in good condition, I might be able to buy it as a lower cost, right? And then understand what you need. Corey and I have come up with a number, like even if you're using a 10% down payment loan, you probably need to have 150K in your pocket just to get the property up and running. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. And Erin, so we can work with you as a buyer's agent for all the Shenandoah properties?
Yes, ma'am. I cover from Winchester to Loudon. I live in a little town called Berryville, just about 10 minutes from Winchester, but I am in the Shenandoah Valley every single day. After this, I'm going to Stanley to take a look at that property I just mentioned to Matt. And I have a listing, land listing coming on in Stanley as well. So I'm out there every day.
Is Berryville good for short term?
Berryville is an interesting place. Clark County is very challenged when it comes. They have allowed short-term rentals, but you cannot. It's got to be in a forestry or agricultural district, so it's got to be outside of town. They will not allow anything in town for that. Um, Clark County is also one of those where they are very no growth. Like they want it to be rural, right? So to do something like this, it has to be a special property in our area because there's a lot of stuff in Bluemont, for example. That's in a good zone, but check the HOAs there. Bluemont is a great spot because you got the Appalachian Trail, you've got the breweries, you got some wineries not too far away. But I would tell you Winchester, outside of Winchester, is great because you can get to town and there's a lot of amenities within town for that. But inside Winchester City, there's specific regulations. You can get a short-term rental in Winchester City, but you have to have a permit and they have specific rules on zoning and things like that. So yes, I can help you with all of that. I'd love that. I'm also I'm a big proponent of I'm a real estate agent. So Corey is an analyst by trade, right? So I'm all about marketing. I'm like, who's going to be the person that would rent this the most, right? And that's how I go into it. Going, I would see, couples, and I follow a bunch of different, and this is going to be off cuff, but there are certain um, things that people do in Airbnbs, and there are specific rules and regulations. Like that, if you go to, there's a Instagram page called Red Room Cabins. She makes a ton of money, and that's a specific avatar. I'm not going there personally, but that's something that can be marketed, and she does very well at. So I think there's different pockets of fun that you could have out there, but most of the people are going to get out of the cities, visit the have the weekend escape. use the hot tub. That's why the hot tubs are important. The barrel saunas, we're seeing EV charging stations jump out of the plate. Now, if you're up a mountain and down a dirt road, the EV charging station would work if you have one of those Jeeps or trucks, but not one of those Teslas. You're never going to make it. So, knowing that going into it, okay, I'm going to hurt myself if I have a property that's on this dirt road versus I know the house is gorgeous. I'd love to stay there, but I can't get there. So Corey and I know of a portfolio, 8 houses, seven, eight houses. It's 2.5 million. He's making 400 grand in gross revenue. It's difficult to get there. He has 8 Jeeps parked at the bottom of the hill for people to rent with farm tags on them.
What do you think about Staunton?
Stanton's a great spot. You've got, so I'm going to just tag in on that. You've got JMU right close by, right? And so there's a lot of rural areas right along Route 81. I think the center of where your traffic would come from would be that JMU area. So they've got parents' weekends, football games, and things like that. So people still want to come and visit. That's why Massanutten does well too. But Stanton is a great spot. Timberville is good. You could go further west into West Virginia, and there's I saw a property, Corey, I mentioned it to Corey's managing one in Moorfield, West Virginia. That's, it's going to rock. So, there's lots of stuff up and down the 81 corridor, right? Is it close enough for you to get to and visit if you want to? Yeah, absolutely. Right. Anything 2.5 hours after that, it gets a little bit challenging if you're going to do it. My wife's like, we'd love to have a place at Smith Mountain Lake, but it's 3+ hours from our house and it's not easy for a weekend getaway. She doesn't like to ride in the car. I'm like, I'd be there in 2 hours if you allow me to drive that fast. Any other questions? Ryan, thanks for being here, bud. You're always so supportive. Orlando had a question earlier. I'll just go back to that real quick. Long and short, he was thinking about Danville, Virginia. Again, same type of scenario. It's right along the Route 81 corridor. I would say let's see what amenities are around Danville. I don't know enough about the city itself, but it's right in that corridor, and really try to dig in as to where I can get my traffic from. Who's coming? How far away are they coming from? Like I sold a house the other day in a little spot called Free Union, Virginia. To me, it was 2.5 hours away. But what I didn't realize was Charlottesville was 5 minutes, by airplane, or 30 minutes because of the roads. Richmond wasn't far away. So you can get people to come to those locations based on the amenities and not that far of a drive. So, that's kind of my avatar of who I'm looking for. So if we don't have any other questions, I appreciate all of your time. This will be recorded and we will email it out so you can refer back to it. If you are interested in working with Corey or Corey actually has a lot of properties that he knows about by talking to other investors in his sphere of influence that may be for sale. That I don't know about as well. So I'm working as a real estate agent. Corey can help you. We've got attorneys in place. We've got title companies. We've got lenders. We have Corey as a great resource for market managing property and pricing strategies. But between the two of us, we've got the Shenandoah Valley pretty much covered. So if you have any
Right,
questions
Matt?
what's that?
That's right. We got the team here, Sherry as well.
Come
How
on,
are you?
man. We've done this for a while, and so Corey and I've met on Facebook. This is funny, but he's not a fan of real estate agents most of the time, but he likes me for whatever reason because you know real estate is not easy, and there's a lot of rules and regulations that I have to abide by, and sometimes it doesn't match the investor game, and that's okay, right? So he has opportunities that I can't get. And that's why our relationship is good. We've got something worked out where, if he needs me, I can do it. If I need him to do something, he's going to help me out. So we can help more people get what they're looking for as far as the right investment. All right, that's it. Cool, guys. Well, have a great afternoon. Enjoy your son, and let's go.